I should have known that nothing about this trip would feel simple. The cabin was supposed to be a getaway, just a couple of days to breathe, to step away from the noise of work and city life. But as soon as I saw him hauling his duffel out of the trunk, grinning like he always did when he caught me staring too long, I realized it wasn't just the pine air or the mountain silence that would unsettle me. What? My best friend since college, the guy who knew the lyrics to every ridiculous song I hummed under my breath, the one person I could call at 3 a.m. and he'd actually pick up. He was the reason I'd agreed to this weekend trip in the first place. Just the two of us, tucked away in a cabin his uncle owned, miles from anywhere. I told myself it was nostalgia, that I missed the easy way we used to laugh when everything in life was simpler. But if I'm being honest, there was more. Always had been. The way his voice dropped when he was tired, that absent-minded habit he had of running his hand through his hair, how his smile could make my chest feel both weightless and unbearably tight. Little things that no friend should obsess over, but I did anyway. Quietly. Always quietly. The cabin itself felt almost like a cliché from a movie. Cedar walls polished with age, a stone fireplace darkened from years of smoke, and wide windows framing the lake below like it was there just for us. When we first walked inside, Eli tossed me the keys with that easy confidence of his, like he owned the place even though it technically belonged to his family. "Feels good to be off the grid, doesn't it?" he said, stretching, his shirt riding up just enough that I had to look away before he caught me noticing. "Yeah," I muttered, running my hand along the wooden banister as though it demanded my full attention. Definitely different. It was different. Being here with him, without the usual noise of other people, without distractions, left me exposed to feelings I'd spent years burying under layers of friendship and jokes. And I couldn't help but wonder, as he set his bag down on the couch and grinned at me again, if this weekend would change everything. Eli and I had been orbiting each other for nearly a decade, and somewhere along the way, that orbit became the rhythm of my life. We'd met freshman year in a political science lecture neither of us cared about, sitting 2 rows apart until he cracked a joke about the professor's habit of saying "moving forward" every third sentence. I laughed too loudly, he turned around, and from there it was like the universe had clicked something into place. We were different in ways that should have kept us apart. He was the kind of person who thrived in the middle of every crowd, who could make a stranger feel like a lifelong friend in a 10-minute conversation. I was quieter, always more comfortable watching than participating. But somehow we fit. He pulled me out of my head when I got stuck there, and I gave him someone who listened when he needed to drop the performance. It worked. It always had. Remember that time we almost froze solid at Lake Placid because you swore the tent was all season? I asked now, as he rifled through the kitchen cabinets of the cabin, looking for coffee filters. Eli glanced over his shoulder, grinning. "Almost froze solid? You were shivering so hard I thought your teeth were going to crack. And hey, don't blame the tent. You were the one who forgot the sleeping pads. Excuse me, you promised the ground wouldn't feel like a slab of concrete." I said it might not feel like concrete. Big difference. He held up a box of filters triumphantly, then caught my eye. "You only survived because I let you steal half my blanket." I rolled mine eyes, but warmth bloomed in my chest at the memory. What I didn't say was how I'd stayed awake half the night, not because of the cold, but because every brush of his arm against mine had sent my thoughts spiraling places I couldn't admit. This was how it always was with us. Banter that felt like shorthand, as if we spoke a language no one else knew. Our friends had joked for years that we were like an old married couple. Eli had always leaned into it, tossing an arm over my shoulders or calling me babe for a laugh. I'd always laughed too, masking the way those moments lingered long after everyone else forgot them. Later, when we unpacked, the first complication of the trip showed itself. "So," Eli's voice carried a note of mock guilt as he unzipped his duffel. "Funny story." I looked up from my bag. "I don't like the way you said that. Turns out I only brought one sleeping bag. The other one must still be in my closet." I stared at him. "You're kidding." He grinned sheepishly, but there was mischief in his eyes. "On the bright side, this one's extra wide. We can squeeze." My throat went dry, but I forced out a laugh. "You mean I get to suffer through your furnace-like body heat all night? Lucky me." "You say that now," he teased, flopping dramatically onto the couch, "but when the temperature drops below 40, you'll be begging to be closer." I shook my head, pretending to be exasperated, but my pulse betrayed me, thrumming louder than it should. The thought of sharing a sleeping bag, of lying next to him, his breath close, his warmth pressed into me, was something I'd imagined more times than I cared to admit. Now it was suddenly real, and I wasn't sure if I was terrified or exhilarated. As the evening settled in, we cooked pasta on the stovetop, our elbows bumping as we moved around the narrow kitchen. Every brush of contact sparked something in me, and every time I caught him looking just a beat too long, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wasn't imagining it all. The cabin felt smaller than it had when we'd first walked in. Or maybe it wasn't the cabin at all, it was the two of us circling closer without meaning to, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. And with only one sleeping bag waiting upstairs, I had a feeling it was only a matter of time before those unsaid things demanded to be heard. That night the storm rolled in without warning. One moment the sky outside the wide cabin windows was ink dark but calm, the lake glimmering under a thin slice of moon. The next, rain slapped the glass so hard it sounded like pebbles, wind whistling through the pines with a low, haunting note. Eli leaned against the window frame, mug of tea in his hands, watching it. "Guess our morning hike's off," he said, voice light, though the flicker of lightning lit up his face in sharp relief. "Guess so," I murmured, trying to focus on my book but reading the same sentence 3 times. The storm was a problem, sure, but the real storm was upstairs. Or rather, the sleeping bag waiting there, too small for 2 grown men unless they didn't mind the kind of closeness that left no space for pretending. By the time we turned in, the cabin was creaking under the force of the wind, branches scraping the roof. Eli tossed his shirt onto the back of a chair, then grinned at me as though nothing about this was strange. "You're not gonna make me sleep on the floor, are you? 'Cause I'm telling you right now, I'll steal all the blankets out of spite." I tried to match his easy tone. "I don't think spite works if you're already the one hogging the only blanket." He laughed, that low warm sound that always seemed to settle in my chest long after it ended. Then he climbed into the sleeping bag, patting the space beside him. "Come on. We're not that big. We'll fit." I hesitated, suddenly very aware of how loud the rain was, how small the room felt. Then, before I could overthink it further, I slid in next to him. The bag was warm from his body heat, and the press of his shoulder against mine made it feel impossibly tighter. "See," he said, his voice close, almost in my ear. "Not so bad." "Sure," I whispered, staring at the ceiling beams. "Not bad." It was unbearable. Every nerve in my body was aware of him, of the way his breath tickled my temple when he shifted, of the accidental brush of his knee against mine. I lay rigid, terrified that if I moved even an inch, he'd notice the way my pulse jumped. But Eli didn't seem bothered. He shifted again, rolling onto his side so he faced me, his arm draped loosely across the space between us. Our noses couldn't have been more than a foot apart. His eyes caught the glow of the storm's light, soft and curious. "You're really tense," he said after a moment. "You okay?" I forced a laugh. "Just not used to this." "What? Sharing a bed with me?" His lips curved into a teasing smile. "We've done worse. Remember the bus ride in Spain? 12 hours and you drooled on my shoulder." My face heated. "That was different." "Yeah, you're right," he said, voice dropping, thoughtful. "This is better." I didn't know what to do with that. His words lingered, hanging in the space between us, heavier than the storm outside. Did he mean it the way it sounded? Or was this just Eli, playful, careless with affection that left me tangled up for days? I turned onto my side to face away, but that only made things worse. His chest brushed against my back, the weight of his arm hovering as though he might pull me closer. My heart thudded painfully. "Stop it," I told myself. "Don't want what you can't have." And yet, when the cabin shuddered with a crack of thunder and Eli's hand found mine, instinctive, steady, I didn't pull away. "You're freezing," he murmured, his thumb brushing over my knuckles like he hadn't even thought about it. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed me, thin and shaky. He didn't let go. Instead, he shifted closer, closing the small distance until there was no pretending anymore. His chest pressed to my back, his legs tangled lightly with mine. He was warm, steady, grounding in a way that left me simultaneously safe and utterly undone. "Better?" he asked softly. I swallowed hard. "Yeah, better." In the darkness my mind spun. Did he feel the way I did? The pull, the quiet ache of wanting more than friendship? Or was this just comfort, nothing more? Every accidental brush, every laugh, every too long look from the past years rushed through me like the storm outside. I wanted to ask. I wanted to turn around, to close the last inch between us and finally know. But fear kept me still, the fear that I'd ruin everything, that the one person I couldn't lose would slip away if I reached for too much. So I stayed quiet, memorizing the steady rhythm of his breathing against me, the warmth of his hand still resting over mine. And in that silence, with the storm howling outside and Eli wrapped around me like he belonged there, I realized I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't keep ignoring. The storm didn't ease up. Hours passed, and still the wind pressed against the cabin like it wanted in, the rain hammering the roof in uneven bursts. I hadn't slept at all. Not with Eli's body pressed against mine, not with his hand still resting loosely around my fingers as though it belonged there. I told myself I'd eventually drift off, but every shift he made pulled me back from the edge of sleep. His breath fanning against the back of my neck, the slow drag of his knee brushing mine when he shifted in his sleep, the unconscious way he drew closer as though seeking me out even in dreams. At some point, maybe around 3 in the morning, he stirred. I felt it before I heard him, his chest rising with a sharp inhale. Then his voice, low and husky with sleep, came quietly into the darkness. "You're still awake." It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I admitted, trying to sound casual. "Storm's loud." His grip on my hand tightened slightly. "That or your brain won't shut up." "Which is it?" I swallowed. He knew me too well. "Both." He shifted then, rolling onto his back. For a second, I thought he'd pull away and some small, selfish part of me ached at the loss of his warmth. But instead, he tugged lightly at my hand. "Turn around." The words weren't a command, but something in his tone made it impossible to refuse. Slowly, heart in my throat, I shifted to face him. The storm lit up the room in a pale flash, and for a moment I saw him clearly, hair mussed, eyes heavy with sleep but searching mine with quiet intensity. "You've been weird all day," he said softly. "Not in a bad way, just different." My throat tightened. "I'm fine." "Bullshit." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "I've known you for 10 years. I can tell when you're carrying something around in that head of yours. So what is it?" I froze. The easy answer was right there, ready on my tongue, just tired, just stressed, just nothing. But his hand was still on mine, warm and grounding, and his eyes held me in place like he wouldn't accept the half-truths I usually offered. My voice cracked. I tried again. "I don't want to mess this up." "Mess what up?" His voice was careful now, cautious, as though he already sensed where this was heading. "Us," I whispered. "This." The silence that followed was unbearable. I could hear the rain, the crack of thunder in the distance, my own heartbeat thundering louder than both. Finally, Eli shifted closer, his brow furrowed. "Why would you think you'd mess us up?" I laughed weakly, though it wasn't funny. "Because there's stuff I don't say. Stuff I've been trying not to say for years." His eyes softened. He reached up, brushing a stray strand of hair from my forehead, his touch so gentle it made my chest ache. "Say it," he murmured. My heart stuttered. "Eli." "Say it," he repeated, firmer this time but not unkind. "The dam broke." "I like you," I blurted, the words tumbling out too fast, too raw. "More than I should. More than a friend's supposed to. I have for years, and I've been scared if I said anything, it would ruin what we have. And maybe it will. But I can't." My breath shook. "I can't keep lying about it. Not here, not with you holding my hand like it's nothing when it's everything to me." There. It was out. I felt naked, exposed, waiting for him to laugh or pull away or give me that pitying look I dreaded more than anything. But he didn't. Instead, Eli stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. His hand lingered on my face, thumb tracing the edge of my jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "You idiot," he said softly. "You think you've been the only one?" I blinked. "What?" He laughed, but it wasn't teasing, it was shaky, like he was trying to steady himself. "Do you know how many times I almost said something? How many times I wanted to? Spain, the lake, hell. Last week when you were half asleep on the phone with me. I've been just as scared as you." The air rushed out of me in a disbelieving laugh. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." His hand slid down, resting over my chest where my heart was racing. "I thought if I said anything I'd lose you. That you didn't want me like that and I'd wreck the best thing in my life. So I kept my mouth shut." My breath caught. "We're idiots. Biggest idiots alive." He grinned, but his eyes were shining, more vulnerable than I'd ever seen them. The storm cracked outside, lightning flooding the room again. And in that brief light, I saw every bit of truth written on his face. "Can I?" he started, hesitation in his voice. "Please?" I whispered before he finished. And then he kissed me. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just the brush of his lips against mine, tentative and testing, like he was still afraid I'd pull away. But I didn't. I leaned into it, into him, into everything I'd been holding back for years. His hand slid to the back of my neck, drawing me closer, and I let out a sound I hadn't meant to, relief, wonder, something between both. When we broke apart, we stayed close, foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling in the dark. "Wow," he murmured, his thumb still stroking the line of my jaw. "Yeah," I breathed, unable to stop smiling. "Wow." We lay there for a long time after, the storm still raging outside but feeling distant now, irrelevant. The only thing that mattered was the warmth of his body against mine, the lingering taste of his kiss, the quiet certainty that this wasn't a mistake. Finally, Eli broke the silence, his voice gentle but steady. "So, what now?" I thought about it, the fear, the risk, the years of silence between us. Then I looked at him and it wasn't even a question anymore. "Now," I said softly. "Now we stop pretending." The kiss had cracked something open in me, and I didn't think I'd ever be able to go back. For years I'd carried the weight of my feelings like a secret stone in my pocket. Always there, heavy, always hidden. Now it was out in the open, and instead of shattering, the world felt lighter. Eli still hadn't let me go. His arm rested across my waist like he was afraid I'd vanish if he loosened his grip. I shifted closer, letting my forehead rest against the hollow of his collarbone, and he chuckled low in his chest. "You're clingy," he teased, voice soft with affection. "Shut up," I muttered, though I didn't move away. "You're the one who's basically wrapped around me like a human octopus." "I'm keeping you warm," he said matter-of-factly, squeezing me tighter. "Multifunctional, really. Best friend, travel buddy, heat source, now boyfriend. I'm a package deal." The word slipped out so casually, boyfriend, that it took a second to register. My heart jumped and I tilted my head back to look at him. He smirked like he knew exactly what he'd done. "You can't just drop that word like it's nothing," I said. His grin softened. "Why not? That's what you are, isn't it? Unless you're planning to reject me after kissing me senseless." "I kissed you senseless," I shot back, grateful for the banter because it steadied the flood of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. "Oh sure," he said laughing. "That was totally you in charge. Definitely not me." I rolled my eyes, but then his expression shifted, playful, fading into something quieter, steadier. His hand found mine under the blanket, fingers threading easily, naturally, like it had always been waiting to happen. "I'm serious though," he murmured. "I don't want this to be just a cabin thing. Or a storm thing. I want us. For real." Something in my chest tightened, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was relief. "Me too." We fell into silence then, but it was different from before. Not heavy. Not filled with unsaid things. Just comfortable, like the air between us had finally cleared. Of course, Eli being Eli, he couldn't resist breaking it after a few minutes. "So, you've liked me for years, huh?" I groaned, covering my face with my free hand. "Don't start." "Oh, I'm absolutely starting." His grin was audible. "When did it happen? Was it my devastating charm? My unparalleled sense of humor? My—" "It was Spain," I interrupted before he got too smug. "Spain? Yeah. That bus ride. You let me drool on your shoulder for 12 hours and didn't complain once. That was when I realized." He was quiet for a beat. Then softer, "That was the trip I almost kissed you." My breath caught. "You what?" "I was going to. You were half asleep, your hair all messed up, and I just wanted to. But then I thought, no, you'd freak out, you'd hate me, I'd lose you. So I didn't." I shook my head, incredulous. "We're such idiots." "The biggest." He laughed, but there was a warmth in it, a kind of relief. "At least now we know." "Yeah," I said, my voice low but certain. "Now we know." The storm had begun to fade outside, the rain softening to a steady drizzle. I felt sleep tugging at me, but for once I didn't fight it. I was cocooned in warmth, in the steady rhythm of Eli's breathing, in the unbelievable fact that he wanted me to. Before I drifted off, he pressed a kiss to my temple, his lips lingering there. "We'll figure it out," he whispered. "Whatever comes next. We'll figure it out together." And for the first time in years I believed him. Morning crept in slowly, pale light spilling across the wooden beams of the cabin ceiling. The storm had passed, leaving behind a stillness that felt almost reverent. I woke to the weight of Eli's arm draped over my waist, his breath warm against the back of my neck. For a moment I just lay there, memorizing it, the simple fact of us no longer a secret, no longer something I had to bury. When I shifted slightly, his grip tightened. "Don't move," he mumbled, voice thick with sleep. "I need coffee," I whispered, though the truth was I didn't want to move either. He cracked one eye open, smirking groggily. "Coffee can wait." "This," he tugged me back against him, "can't." I laughed quietly, feeling lighter than I had in years. "You're ridiculous." "Ridiculously in love with you," he said without hesitation, and even though he said it half asleep, my heart stuttered like it was hearing it for the first time. I twisted in his arms so I could face him, studying the messy tumble of his hair, the unguarded softness in his expression. You can't just drop that phrase like it's casual, I said, echoing my words from the night before. Why not? He asked, eyes sparkling despite the sleep. It's true. The thing about Eli was, he never said anything halfway. He didn't hedge or second guess, not when it came to the people he loved. And right then I realized that was exactly what I needed. His certainty was enough to steady all the years of doubt in me. We finally dragged ourselves out of bed, made coffee, and stood shoulder to shoulder by the wide cabin window. The lake outside glittered in the new light, steam rising from the water like it was exhaling after the storm. You realize we're gonna have to tell people, Eli said eventually, nudging my shoulder. Oh God, I groaned. You're going to make it a whole thing, aren't you? His grin was mischievous. Absolutely. I'm going to call Marcus first because he owes me $50 from a bet he made in sophomore year that we'd end up together. Then I'm going to tell your sister because she already suspects and I love being right. I buried my face in my hands. You're impossible. You love me. Unfortunately, he was right. Yeah, I said quietly, dropping my hands, letting him see it written plain on my face. I do. The words hung between us for a moment, not fragile but strong, like something that had always been there, waiting to be spoken aloud. Eli reached for my hand, lacing his fingers with mine, and for once I didn't hesitate. It felt natural, easy, like we'd been doing it forever. He squeezed once, firmly. Then that's all that matters. Whatever comes next, we'll figure it out. We stood there for a long time, drinking coffee and watching the lake, hand in hand. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks, no sweeping declarations. Just us, side by side, beginning something new. Later, when we packed up the cabin and loaded the car, I caught Eli sneaking one last look at the sleeping bag tossed carelessly into the back seat. He grinned at me. Souvenir, he said, and I rolled my eyes. But as we drove away, the mountains fading behind us and the road unfolding ahead, I realized it was more than just a joke. That sleeping bag, the cramped space, the storm outside, the confession it had forced out of us, wasn't just a complication anymore. It was a marker. The point where everything had shifted. I glanced over at Eli, one hand steady on the wheel, the other reaching across the console to rest palm up on the seat between us. I slid my fingers into his without a word, and he smiled without looking away from the road. This was just the beginning. And for once, I wasn't afraid of what came next.